The goal of the DC Tutoring and Mentoring Initiative is to get a tutor or mentor for the 2 out of 3 DC students reading below grade level or with other academic or non-academic needs. This would transform education and transform our civic culture. The usual approaches to recruiting volunteers, social media, celebrity endorsements, volunteer fairs, word of mouth, don't begin to get us where we need to go. There are maybe 5,000 tutors and mentors now. We need to get to around 60,000. What options remain? I believe canvassing needs to be at the foundation of our work, even as we combine it with the other usual approaches. At one level, canvassing is easy and simple. We are asking people, strangers, if they have an hour or two a week to volunteer as tutors and mentors at a time and a place that is convenient for them. For some people, canvassing is easy. For most, it is hard. Very few find it a fun activity. But the fundamental skill of talking to strangers about what you believe is important can be learned by everybody. It can be deeply fulfilling once you get comfortable with it. And it is a vital foundation for the civic and political changes that we need. I believe that our civic canvassing work can be the moral equivalent of the lunch counter sit-ins and the marches of the civil rights movement. Just as the civil rights movement peacefully confronted Americans with the wide gap between their better values and their actual behavior, we are doing the same. We start with changing individual hearts and minds, but our broader goal is to change our civic culture as well as to give kids a decent chance at success in school and in life. Our work is about standing up for the kind of world we want to live in, one built on love, not hate, one built by people proactively taking responsibility for one another and for our nation and communities as a whole. And we know from the civil rights movement and other movements in the U.S. and abroad that this is possible. What we do does not require the physical courage of those on the front lines of the civil rights movement, but it does require moral and social courage. Most of us don't approach strangers and ask them for their help. It feels intrusive. It violates the norm that you don't get in my space, I don't get in yours. And we are stepping out of our accepted roles to speak our truth, share our values, and ask for help.
Canvassing can be scary. It forces us to have the courage to stand alone. We have to face our fear of rejection, our sense of who we are as a person. Do we depend on the approval of others, or are we comfortable saying, in essence, this is who I am and what I believe? Are we able to treat people with genuine kindness, generosity, and respect, and keep our composure even when someone ignores us or rejects us, deems us unworthy of their attention? These are questions that the leaders and those on the front lines of the civil rights movement, the women's movement, and the gay rights movement all faced. It's not unlike some of the fears that a person coming out of the closet faces. But it is our opportunity, an opportunity to get past our fears, to better understand ourselves, and to grow as leaders and as human beings.
Although probably 80% of people are reasonably friendly, sometimes we encounter a person who is genuinely annoyed that they are being asked to help. None of us like rejection, but we can't avoid experiencing some of it. Like the black college students in Nashville and around the country who in 1960 slowly but surely desegregated all white lunch counters, standing firm in their beliefs as they were not only rejected but sometimes beaten and arrested.
Canvassing is emotionally difficult for most people, just like riding a bike is difficult at first. But we learn. We will cover some details to make it easier for you. First, let me describe the different ways that our outreach volunteers do their work. I've been focused on the most difficult of our approaches, but there are other approaches that are easier in getting started, even if you don't feel comfortable approaching strangers. There are 4 approaches to help move our work along. Tabling is the easiest. We don't always use a table, but when we do, we need someone to stand next to it and talk with people who approach about what we're doing and get their contact information if they're interested. Especially if the weather is cold, it's noisy, or there are lots of people moving quickly. It's more effective just to pass out the DC TMI flyers, like this one, instead of trying to engage people in conversation or get their contact information.
Most of our best canvassers focus on quickly finding people who seem open, friendly, or interested in tutoring or mentoring, and then engage them and sign them up. They are maximizing the number of sign-ups, which is great. But if we are really going to change our civic culture and expand the number of people willing to help, I believe we also need more people to practice what I call civic canvassing. Having gentle but determined conversations with people, regardless of their initial demeanor or openness, to remind them of their ideals, awaken their moral sense, and ask them about the barriers to their getting more involved. It sometimes means that we don't sign up as many people initially, but it may be more valuable in the long run.
Here's a recap of the 4 approaches. The next set of slides will focus on developing a full array of skills and the mindset needed to reach people, whether they are initially receptive or not. You will have to decide once you get started what approach works best for you. Unless you are only handing out flyers, you will need to be able to answer 4 questions. What are we doing? We are looking for people to volunteer as tutors and mentors, or just to be a friend to a kid in need. Why are we doing it? Only 2 out of 3 kids are reading at grade level, and more have other academic or non-academic needs. How do we do it? You tell us when and where you can help, and we will partner you and your team with one of our 40 partner tutoring and mentoring organizations that's a convenient match for you in DC or the surrounding suburbs. What's the larger context? The big why. We need to get people more involved if we are to make a better world. We need a big shared purpose to bring us together across class, race, and ideology. The positive equivalent of a hurricane or other disaster to bring us together for the long term. Okay, let's put it together in 3 sentences that take less than 30 seconds to say. Hi, we're looking for volunteers to work with the 2 out of 3 DC students reading below grade level, and because we believe people need to get more involved if we are to make a better world. If they're still with you, we partner with 40 tutoring and mentoring organizations and schools around the city. You tell us when and where you're available, and we will match you to a convenient program. Almost any day of the week or time of day, we've got partners who desperately need more help. Keep in mind that people are likely to be surprised when you approach them. Their minds are racing. Can I trust this person? Are they trying to sell me something? Do I have time for this? It's important to speak in a way that a busy and possibly anxious and preoccupied mind can take in. What is most important is to slow down and emphasize 2 out of 3. The tone in my voice says, can you believe it? 2 out of 3 reading below grade level? If the person has stopped or seems willing to listen, I might add, or with other academic or non-academic needs, to help them understand that the goal is not just to help kids with reading and English. I also slow down and emphasize that we will match you with one of our 40 partners so they understand we can provide them with a lot of good choices. You can change up the opening if you want, but please remember that you want to keep it as short as possible to keep their attention. The first, "Hi, can I give you this?" is an icebreaker if you are only focused on getting flyers into the people's hands. The downside is that if people are walking fast, they can brush off the question and you don't have a chance to give them a sense for what we are doing. Especially if you are trying to maximize sign-ups, the next 3 questions can be good. Are you interested in helping kids? Can you help tutor or mentor a young person? I like the last question because it is an educational one too. Do you know that only 1 out of 3 DC students are reading at grade level? While you are talking, try to get a flyer into their hands so they can learn more, even if they don't have time to talk.
Now let me switch gears from the meaning of the words to the emotions we want to convey. I'm going to talk about 2 metaphors to keep in mind when you canvass. First, we are planting seeds. I can't emphasize it enough. We want everyone to feel they had a positive interaction with us. We recognize that most people aren't prepared to sign up on the spot, but we can plant seeds in their hearts and minds that can grow over time and that we and our partner organizations and schools water, through social media, contacts through employers and religious congregations, and maybe even hearing about the needs in our work in the local news media, or through the Obamas or Oprah or other influential and inspirational people. Please feel positive about the potential for this work, even though at times it may feel like slow going. This quote from Maya Angelou says it all. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But people will never forget how you made them feel. Our goal in keeping things positive and planting seeds is tied to our core belief in how we want to relate to one another in our world. We want to live in a world where we support one another and recognize we each have our own unique journey. People have different life trajectories. Some may be dealing with mental illness, a bad work situation, the breakup of a long-term relationship, or financial pressures. We can't solve their problems, and they perhaps can't support our work, but we can show a little love. Now let's switch to a more challenging metaphor. Imagine a child on the second floor of a burning building. A ladder is nearby, but you need someone to hold it. You see someone you've never met, listening to music, in their own world, oblivious to what's around them. Would you ask the stranger for help? Of course you would. You would speak to them with a sense of confidence and with a sense of urgency, even if you can see that the person walking toward you is in their own world and has no interest in talking. You would expect them to help a fellow human being. You would expect them to naturally care, even though that instinct may be bottled up sometimes. And you would trust them to want to do the right thing in this situation. We need to speak to people about volunteering as tutors and mentors with exactly the same expectations, whether they meet them today or not. It's a lesson good teachers and leaders understand. Set expectations high, and people can be supported to meet them. Now let's turn to what I found to be the most effective way to canvass. I pick somebody out at a distance that I want to have a conversation with. Some canvassers prefer to talk to people who are alone, but sometimes a couple or a group will seem open and interested in what's happening around them, and that usually includes a conversation with me too. I start walking toward them in a welcoming way, because I believe that they will appreciate what I have to say, even if they don't think so at first. When I get near them, I turn and start walking with them, so I have the time to communicate our basic message without inconveniencing them or slowing them down. The core message takes only 12 seconds to say at a comfortably slow pace. We are looking for volunteer tutors or mentors to work with the 2 out of 3 DC kids reading below grade level, and because I believe it's important to get more people involved if we are going to make a better world. We want to pass out flyers, but more importantly, we want to have real conversations. As I mentioned earlier, it takes around 30 seconds to give a very brief explanation of what we do. That's why talking with people, if they don't stop when you initially speak to them, is so valuable. 30 seconds. I believe we can all take 30 seconds to at least think about what we can do to make a better world. Keep in mind, too, that we are walking with people so as not to waste even that brief amount of time. But you are communicating more than the words by how you say it, and the 12 to 30 seconds gives you time to communicate your emotions and intent, too. You are trying to indicate by your patient, considerate, steady, but determined focus that you feel this is important and that you trust that the person you are speaking with has equally good intentions and cares about their community just as you do. As Teddy Roosevelt put it, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's always an interactive process. You need to listen and assess where the person is at, not just talk. It's the essence of empathy, of intuition, of reading people. President Bill Clinton was famous for it. It's a valuable skill that you can learn too. I find that I can group people's responses to my canvassing pitch into 5 buckets. Maybe 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 are ready to act. In most situations, around half will be supportive, even if they're not ready to sign up. Another 1 out of 3 will be neutral. They'll take a flyer, but I'm not sure if they'll read it or throw it away. Maybe 1 in 5 will avoid communication. I find I can usually reach them if I walk with them so they can hear my 30-second pitch on what we do and why I feel it's important. It's easy to target only friendly-looking people, but I believe that all of us need to be more caring and involved. That's why I often target people who seem likely to be uninterested. I'm sometimes surprised by how friendly and welcoming they are, but there's also the occasional person who is downright negative or even threatening. You are welcome to let them go past, but I usually walk with them if they let me and try to engage them in polite and gentle conversation. I doubt any of them have signed up to volunteer, but I feel like it's important to try to understand them better and help them maybe become less negative, more open to helping others, and more hopeful in their daily lives. Does it work? I'd like to think it does, maybe 30 to 50% of the time, but it's hard to say for sure. Let's go over a few typical scenarios for moving people toward more positive civic mindsets, if not actually signing them up to help. One typical response is someone won't slow down or interact in any way. If that occurs, I walk with them and say, I'd appreciate it if I could give you this. You can read it later. This really is important. If they say I never considered doing it myself, I'll emphasize that our partner organizations desperately need help. No special skills are required. One-on-one tutoring is very different from teaching a class. Virtually anybody who can read or do math or just be a caring adult can help. Others are positive but emphasize that they want to sign up online. I understand this and I thank them for that. But I also emphasize that people often forget to sign up online, and we're not going to harass them, but we'd really appreciate if they just take care of it now and we will get back to them later. Another common response, I don't have much time right now. My response, it's only an hour or two a week. We partner with 40 organizations that work morning, afternoons, and evenings, virtually 7 days a week. We try to make it really easy to get involved. If you give me your contact information now, we'll try to make a match that really works for you. And then the most common response, I am too busy. My response, we're all too busy. I am too. But we're not going to make a better world unless people make the time to get more involved. It's only a couple of hours a week. You know what I mean? Even busy people with unpredictable work and travel schedules can find ways to help. Our partner organizations understand that there will be weeks when volunteers are traveling, and the tutoring organizations often have substitutes who can fill in. The need for help is enormous. Even if people can't commit to helping every week, you can help as a substitute tutor or help us with canvassing and outreach once a month. Or you can help us get your employer involved, since our greatest challenge is finding people to help during the weekday. I've worked hard over the past couple of years to be able to see each person, no matter how rude, as somebody I truly want to be kind to. I'm not a Buddhist, but I've found their loving kindness meditation helpful to mull over before I canvass, or when I feel I need to center myself. May I be loving and kind. May I be healthy and strong. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. May you, a friend, be loving and kind. May you, an enemy, be loving and kind. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. Perhaps the person was just having a bad day. Perhaps their life is really bad right now. They are depressed. They lost their job or their marriage broke up. A big part of why I believe this work is so important is that I believe we need to be more kind and compassionate to one another, to adults as well as to kids. So I try to think of a rude person as giving me a positive opportunity to test my beliefs and whether I can put them into practice. It's like game day for a football player. Let's see if I can execute in real life what I have been practicing. Relax with canvassing. You don't have to have all the answers. Choose the words that are comfortable for you and make them your own. Stumped by a question? Here's a simple answer. Give us your contact info and one of our team will get back to you. If you are working in pairs, canvass separately and then come together to share your experience and possibly vent. If you need it, Walk for a minute or two to recenter yourself after a difficult interaction. Yes, it can be stressful, like the physical exercise that helps us stay physically healthy and build muscle. Think of this the same way. It's eustress, good stress, that helps us build our civic, moral, and spiritual leadership muscles. We are almost at the end. I hope we have given you a concrete feel and tips for how to canvas. But the main thing is not the specific words you use, but your ability to be authentic, speak from your heart, connect the work with your values and experience, and communicate your passion to make a better world. I believe that if we don't develop habits of being active, of being involved in our community, of being better at connecting in positive ways with one another, our democracy is truly in peril, as wise leaders from the nation's founders to Presidents Lincoln and Obama have said. This work is not an alternative to politics. It's the foundation. It's about building the bridges across class, race, ideology, and geography, and working together for a shared purpose that will build our wisdom and compassion for the long term. Voting helps, but it's not enough if we are to fix what's broken in this country, whether we are concerned about global warming, racism, poverty, or inequality. My hope is that you will find your canvassing experience of long-term personal value too. Our country needs leaders who can think, communicate, and act with courage, creativity, self-awareness, wisdom, and compassion. Our work will help you progress down this path, and this in turn will serve you well in whatever roles you play. But it takes time each day for practice and reflection if you are to successfully make a career of humanity, as Dr. King put it. Now is the time to be organizing your life so you have the time each day or week to both make a difference in the world and learn from that experience. As George Bernard Shaw put it, this is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances. My life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. Life is no brief candle for me. It is a splendid torch which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. This work truly matters, both to individual kids who need extra support and a helping hand from a caring adult, and to our community and our country. This work isn't easy, but we are accustomed to doing things that are hard over the long term. Think about getting up every morning to exercise or study. I believe what Martin Luther King said 50 years ago is even more true today. Our survival depends on our ability to square our moral progress with our scientific progress and learn the practical art of living in harmony. I believe that our civic canvassing is the best way to make that broad moral progress that we need. We are all just ordinary people, even Martin Luther King, struggling to make sense of the world, to do what's right, to find love and happiness. We all have fears and we all make mistakes, but we can all do amazing things if we set both our minds and our hearts to it and work together. I hope that you will join us. Thank you.